Hello, folks. Well, this is an addendum and a commentary to our last few videos to to hopefully give a perspective to people who are watching these in order to encourage them, in order to bring them to a place where uh, they can embrace the teachings that they've just heard. And I know that some of the things that we've just heard have been very challenging. Um, and that's on purpose because once we understand the fullness of what God has called us into, it is truly a challenging lifestyle. I'm thinking about Paul, who says, I consider everything in this world rubbish compared to the upward calling of Christ. And if you think of the word upward, he's knowing that wherever he is in life, God is calling him to a higher place. And so that's what I want to encourage you to um, think about that higher place. And so I'm going to read a series of 3 verses to you, and then I'm going to launch into a bit of a commentary. So, um, so I pray that you're blessed in this. So, first one I'm going to read is Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous rule, the people rejoice. When a wicked man rules, people groan. So that's pretty plain, and we've all been there. We've read about it, we've heard about it, we've seen books about it, histories about it. Um, Sometimes a fairly righteous person will be in charge or in charge of something. So I know that I have to deal with government people on occasion. Sometimes because I'm a contractor, I have to talk to the contractors board. And when I make that phone call, I don't know who I'm going to get, and I pray, I ask God, please let somebody caring and reasonable answer the phone. Because if I get someone who's not caring and not reasonable, I'm going to have a very difficult time, and I may not be able to get justice or reasonableness or something into my life. And so, because certain government entities control areas of your life, then you're subject to their whims. And so you pray for someone righteous to answer the phone. Same thing when I go into DMV. Sometimes, I have a huge question, or I think maybe I need to work on something in regard to titles of my vehicles. So I hope I run into somebody caring and reasonable. Okay, so those are the words to me that kind of line up with righteous. Um, and so that's kind of the things I'm looking for when I have to interact with government uh, people. I've actually had the opportunity of going to the state legislature of Oregon, and and we were going for homeschool issues, and we were passing out information and goodwill pies, apple pies, which should create a lot of goodwill. Anyway, one of the men, finding out my background and my training, asked me to come back later, and he wanted to ask me some very serious questions about how he should handle the law. And I consider it an incredible privilege to have a person of authority recognize that there are other people who aren't in authority that perhaps had a better handle on reality and righteousness than he did. And so I was able to impart wisdom into that person's way that he ruled the people. And so we see that and we understand that. So that's part one. And so part two is Psalm 37, verses 28 and 29. And for the Lord loves justice and does not forsake his godly ones. They are preserved forever, but the descendants of the wicked will be cut off. Now, if you look at this in a instantaneous time frame, we see that those kind of things don't happen instantaneously. God is looking at the big picture on the long time span, and so um, and so when we see the not forsaking of the godly, many years it seems like, and Jesus even said it when he was on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? In the long run, God did not forsake him. because he seated him at the throne that's higher than all other thrones. But in the short term, it felt like it. Okay, and same thing with us. So sometimes in the short term, but steal this in your heart that God will not forsake His godly ones, and the ones who are struggling will not be forsaken. In verse 29, the righteous will inherit the land and dwell in it forever. So that's part of the promise, and it's part of the promise to look into the future. Well, that's what those passages we looked at in the last two verses we're looking at. That Jesus is his intention is that the righteous do rule, and those righteous are his trained, called out people in his church. Excuse me. And that's so. So when you boil it down, it's you and me. It's you and me. And so we don't see that fulfillment right now, but the fulfillment is promised. So I wish right now I had a glass of water because this tickle is killing me. So the last one I want to read is 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 9. So Peter has taken Exodus chapter 9, and he has applied it, taken it off of Israel and applied it to the church. Why? Because we saw that in the book of Matthew, God took the kingdom of God away from essentially the Israeli nation and the Jewish nation, and he handed it out to different nations of the world. But in general, he's handed it to the church. And so we're manifesting small microcosms of that, even if you don't live currently in a godly nation, and some of us like to think that we do, but in some ways we don't. So in a microcosm, we're living that out in our own personal sphere of influence. So you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession. Okay, so however you want to interpret that as applying to you, that's apply that to yourself. So, but here's the purpose statement, and this is what follows that you may proclaim, and my Bible says excellencies. Your my Bible may say something else. I went to the Greek, and the Greek is the virtues. God has characteristics, virtuous characteristics that have been made manifest in our own experience of Him. So He's steadfast, He's loving, He's caring, he helps us to heal, or he miraculously heals, or he's a forgiving, and He's a cleansing, and He's an equipping, and He's a calling. And so those are all His attributes. And so when we're proclaiming to people things about God, we're proclaiming things we understand about God, things that we've become to know God. We're giving a testimony. We're giving a testimony of how God has worked in our life. So what's the purpose for God calling you? Well, one of the purposes, just one of the purposes, is that you would share your story of your life and your development with God, and how He has changed you, and how you have become different, and how you look to Him for virtue. Okay, so the virtues of Him who have called you out of darkness into His marvelous light. Okay, so we're going to leave it right there. So a lot about what we live and what we do is aimed toward the future. In fact, I am convinced that this age that we're living in, starting with Adam, all the way back to Adam, because there were things that were happening before Adam. Okay, just know that there were things happening before Adam, and some of those things are kind of like shadows, but you can search them out and find them. But there were things happening before Adam, and then Adam was kind of like an answer to those problems that were going on. Okay, and so Adam was the answer. Adam essentially, as a person, failed, but he started a process, and God used that process to develop me and resulted in me and you. And so here we are as a result of that, and we're still part of a process that's going to end. I'm not sure 1,000 years or more later from where we are right now, it's going to change again. And so God is thinking in big chunks of time where we live in small chunks of time. And so he can think back and just remember those days. Oh yeah, I remember making Adam. I remember being there and then watching the the serpent creature that came down and tempted them. And I remember, grieving, but I knew that they were weak, and so he prevailed, and now all of his children are going to inherit his death nature, and so that's so God knows that, and it affects everything that goes on in his life, but he's going to prevail over all of that, and so be comfortable in that. So the so I looked up a statistics, okay, and and this is in regard to Jesus is going to have an administration. That's what we studied, and that's what the scripture says. We're going to be priests and kings. We're going to be part of an administration, and the priesthood and kingship kind of roles actually are very different. Um, and I didn't get a chance to expound on that very much. So the king roles are authority, and authorities are there for people and situations that don't line up with peace and quiet and orderliness and whatever. Okay, and it also lines up with, there's a huge need of the people, but that need cannot be met by individuals. It has to be met in a group effort. Just like we have dams in our area that hold water, and so when the rain stops falling and we need water on our crops, we just pour out the water that's stored in the dam. And so you and I, we go dam up a little pond somewhere. We don't have the answer to the whole problem for everybody, and we might not even have that answer for ourselves. But if we all put together in a joint effort, we can create a huge dam that has millions of acres of water, acre feet of water, and then we have access for the whole area here to be agriculturally flourishing. And so things like that, the national power grid, the national road system. So some things cannot be done by individuals, has to be done collectively. And well, that's the role of the king. Now there are things in life that we need help with personally, and there are people kind of situations. Okay, so I know right now there's some people who don't know how to parent very well. Well, there's groups of people that help people parent, and there's other people that work together to teach and to educate about certain things. And there's other people who are involved in health, and there are people who are help you when you're sick, but there's also people who help you to not get sick, and they understand boosting your immune system. So there's nutritional people, there's herbal people, there's people who have access to the knowledge of the compounds that God has put on this earth to keep people well and strong. And so uh, um, other areas, perhaps relationships, perhaps marriage, perhaps um, um, dealing dealing with an unruly neighbor. Okay, so there's a lot of issues in life that are kind of person to person kind of issues, and they're more of kind of boots on the ground. How do I get through life? And those kind of people I call the priesthood people. So in the old priesthood, I made almost a full page list of things that they did. They educated the people, they judged the people, they helped them through their conflicts. They taught them how to save, they taught them how to spend, they taught them how to budget, they taught them all kinds of things about living their life. And so the priests were those kind of people that did that. And uh, and so so those those people. So I talked about DMV, and I talked about the contractors board. Okay, that's people I come in contact with in the government. Well, if we're going to have a ton of cars out there, we need DMV. Okay, if we're going to have a lot of people out there working independently, helping people take care of their homes, well, there needs to be some kind of oversight there. Well, so that kind of touches on priesthood because it touches on people and lives. Okay, so we see the kings and priests are kind of bookends, and everything kind of falls in between us. Not everybody's going to be a king, but there's going to be governors and mayors and senators and lawmakers and all kinds of bureaucrats to make everything happen. Underneath that, okay, and then over here on priesthood, um, so there are going to be things on this side. So this is, I mean, the ultimate of this is to turn a person to look at God and to pray with them and to hear God's answer. Okay, but other than that, there's wisdom that God has already laid out in this world that we can just grab hold of and give that to people and give them the peace and the tools to live their life. So all between priesthood and the king, and this just came to me while I'm talking to you. There's a whole spectrum of places that God needs people to plug in to help people. So the thought is here we have the unwashed. That used to be a name, the unwashed multitude out there, and they don't understand. They don't know God. And so who's going to direct them into the life? Who's going to help them through the life issues? That's going to get them into the place of fullness of being conformed to the image of Christ. Let's just use that as our picture. The fullness of what that means. Who's going to get those people there? Well, there's people that have helped us get there to wherever we are. And then if God turned the world over to us, then we'd have a whole big project right there, wouldn't we? And so that's what I'm trying to encourage you in that. So so the numbers. I want to talk about the numbers. So right now, United States, approximately 17% of the working people, the people that work and do things, 17% of those actually work in a government role. So they work for the government, supposedly doing things for the people, public servants. Okay, so if we took that for the whole world, we consider in the billions and billions of people. Well, 16% would just be hundreds of millions of people God's going to need in His administration. And that's why the church, if you take all the people of all the churches since Jesus went back up in heaven and started the book of Acts, then you take all those people and put them together, they're going to make an excellent administration. Okay, and it's going to be that because God's got the whole world that He's going to take care of and He's going to save. I just realized John chapter 4, the first time in the Bible, where the people in the Samaria, after the first revival that Jesus was part of, the Samaritan, the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman at the well, started a little revival. Well, that's where they gave him the title. He's going to save the world. Well, that's repeated throughout the New Testament. We're going to have a lesson just on that, on the fact that Jesus intends not just to save the elect, but He intends to save the entire world. And so we're going to look at that in the scriptures. But for right now, He's not going to do that alone, one person at a time. He's going to use you. He's going to use me. He's going to use our friends. He's going to use people that we know to accomplish that. Why? Because that's how He wants to do it. Okay. So I wrote some things down. Biblical example: Moses is sitting there judging people. One guy judging all the people, and his father-in-law looked at him and said, you're only going to be dealt with 20 people maybe, and the rest of the people in that line are going to be frustrated, totally frustrated. He said you need to have a better system than this. So he talked about the you have the person over 1,000, the person over 100, and the person over 10. Okay, so you had those people. Well, that's 11.1% of the people are just involved in that judging thing, and so that's a good number. Okay, that's a good place to start. So God understands that, and so I'm going to share some of my own personal experience. God has made me a command man, borrowing from a man that I know. Yeah, he classifies people into different kinds of people: the prophetic man, the dreaming man, the working man, and the command man. Well, God's put me as a command man. I've always been drawn to leadership, right from grade school, with student council, right all the way through schooling, and the rest of my life. So I'm a business owner, obviously, and so I highly influence the people I work around, the people I work with, and so that all comes under that personality who I am. So when I read, and I've worked inside the Republican Party, I've worked inside the pro-life movement, and I know there's people who are in places of authority that are absolutely corrupt and have no moral bearing at all. I just know that, and it just totally frustrates me. Just totally frustrates me, and I know that all you have to do is grab that guy by the collar and give him a good shaking, and then take him out in the desert, because I grew up in the desert, and just leave him there and say, you commune with the prairie dogs and the deer and the wild pigs for a while until you get your mind on straight, and says, I'm going to take over your job and fix all the things you've screwed up. Okay, so I know that because a man who stands in authority over people should be a man of intense responsibility. And that's what I am. I'm an intense man. And so I see that and those kind of things frustrate me highly. And so when I hear Jesus is going to take some good people and put them in places of power, I'm going, yes, finally, because this place is going to hell in a handbasket because some very, very strange and weak people are in places of power. And so I'm looking forward, like that Proverbs verse, when the righteous are in rule, people rejoice. I want to see the people rejoicing. I want to see them happy. I want to see them prosperous. I want to see things just booming because everybody is being ruled by righteousness. Okay. And so, and so that appeals to me as a command man, but I know that I'm just maybe one in 1,000. Most of the people I know are not command men. They're not take things by the horns and shake them. There are other people too, and I value those people. And so, what does this message hold out for them? And so, I wanted to present that message to them. Um, so I wrote in here. Many, many, many of my brothers and sisters, spiritual brothers and sisters, are quiet, helpful, and unassuming. But I believe that they're also called, just when the Scripture says they're called in the servant leadership, we're all called in the servant leadership, and they are too. So I believe that because the Scripture teaches that, then we need to see that made manifest in how we live our spiritual lives. So, um, so if you're a quiet and unassuming person, and you feel like you're not a command person who wants to take charge and run and tear the enemy down and bring Goliath to his knees, but you just want to help people. Well, there's places for that in Jesus's administration. Maybe he'll put you in a small town. Maybe he'll put you in a medium-sized town. Maybe he'll put you in a smaller context, and you can be very close to a smaller number of people, and you can really change things. I mean, really change things because of your helpfulness, because of your humility, because of your willingness to get into people's lives. Okay, and so that's what he's looking for. Reality. He doesn't need very many guys like me. Those guys like me, tend to fight it out for the place on the top. All the other guys are getting the job done. Okay, so that's why God needs people like you. Whatever your personality and however you're constructed, Jesus called you for a purpose, and there's a purpose written by your name. So um, I wrote down some things. So just consider, there's a place in a medium-sized town for an office for family planning. You could run that, or an office of financial counseling, or an office of life coaching, or an office of prayer journaling, or all of these kind of things. I'm just pulling out of my imagination because I know people. I know what people are always requesting me to do and to say. So I'm going to ask. So I'm letting my family know they're about walking in on this. To stay quiet. So anyway, um, so we have this reality in the book of Hebrews that the spiritual gifts that we get are actually tasting of the gifts of the power to come, and so uh, that means power is coming, and so that means power to exercise things in the spiritual realm and in the physical realm, and so that's going to be given to you and to me. So the book of First Corinthians and the book of Romans both agree that all of the elect have access to spiritual gifts, and some have access to multiple spiritual gifts. And in fact, it says in Corinthians, you can desire more spiritual gifts, okay? And God's not going to withhold that from you. So he says, seek prophesying because that's the best spiritual gift there is. But the reason is because all this gift translates into the role you play in the administration of Jesus. So I'm encouraging all of us to desire that upward call and to seek to be prepared for that role and to pray for it, to believe in it, to embrace it when it comes, and to exercise it, and to excel in it, and to make the world a better place because you are in it. Okay, so I'm going to finish out this passage by reading Romans chapter 8, verse 15 through 25, and you'll hear a lot of those kind of things that I just mentioned explained in this passage. So I'm going there now. Okay, here we are. For all who are being led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God. Very basic explanation. So, first thing we have to develop is, can we hear the voice of God when He speaks to us? Okay. So being led by the Spirit of God, that's the number one thing. Okay. For you have not received a spirit of slavery leading to fear again. No, that's not what you're about. That's what God called you for. Okay. But you've received the spirit of adoption as sons, by which we cry out, Abba, Father. And so we have a very personal identification with God being our Father. And that's like the second thing. The Spirit Himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God. Just like you heard it here, but did you hear it down here? Okay. And he says, I'm not even going to speak to your mind and your ear. I'm going to speak right into the essence of who you are, that you are a child of God and you are a developing child of God. And that we need to have that kind of assurance. Okay. And if children, then we're heirs. And I mean, that's just a legal thing, and that's just common sense. Okay. Well, if we're being raised as children, when we get to be adults, what's going to happen to us? Will we be sitting around in our room hoping we can get out and do some things? No, we're going to be given huge amounts of resources and a nice car to drive, and so get out there and get all this stuff done. Okay, that's how it works. When my sons came of age, your dad was a contractor, so he got him a pickup truck and he gave him a bunch of tools and he gave him a list of assignments, and they went out and did it. And now they're very successful in the construction world. Okay, well, because as they came of age, let's start treating them like adults, and I did, and they flourished under that. And so that's how your spiritual life is going to be. 18. Put 17 again. If children, then heirs, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, if indeed we suffer with him, in order that we may also be glorified with him. When I think about the suffering, I think a little bit about boot camp. I think about the school of hard knocks. Okay. That's kind of what we're in right now. We're in that place. And so it's not fun and games, this life that we're living, but it has a purpose and a training essential to us. Okay. For I consider the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that's to be revealed in us. And that's a plain thing from our own life. Sometimes we go through things, and then on the other side of that is just magnificent wonderment. Okay, well, as much as it happens on this earth, it happens a million times more in God's kingdom. In fact, I cannot see, and the ear cannot hear, and the brain cannot imagine all the great things God has in store for us. So it's worth everything that we go through down here. It's really worth it. It really is. Okay. So 19, for the anxious longing of creation awaits eagerly for the revealing of the sons of God. Well, that's kind of weird. Now, he's talking about kind of personal things. Now he's talking about all creation. So all creation includes heaven and earth and space and all that stuff. And guess what it's thinking about right now? I can't wait till you and I and all those guys they get opened up into their full responsibility. Okay, so what's going to happen? That makes a big question mark in my mind. For creation was subjected to futility. Oh, well, creation is futility, not of its own will, but because of him who subjected it in hope. And then it says in the Greek, because creation itself will be set free from its own slavery to corruption. So guess what? Creation is just running down. If you know the laws of entropy, the laws of energy, you'll know that everything's just going to run down and it's just all going to turn into nothing, and it just all be sitting there. Okay, but that's not what it was built for. It was built to go forward, but it can't go forward without direction, and it can't go without, and it doesn't have any direction until the sons of God step into their appropriate places. Okay. And so if you look at a star, the star says, "Hey, I'm waiting. I'm looking at you and I'm thinking about it." You look at a cactus, and a cactus is saying, "I know you think I look cool, but guess what? Life's going to be better for me when you take up your role." And so every part of creation is going to look at you. I'm thinking about a horny toad. I held a horny toad in my hand, first time for a long time this last summer. Well, that little horny toad, he was glad that I was holding him because he says, I spend all my time with my nose next to the ground, but when I'm in your hand, I get to see everything. Okay, so he says, so you're just a blessing to me. Well, when I come into my fulfillment, I'm going to be a real blessing to a horny toad. Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of just a little touch of humor to say, hey, all the creation around you is waiting for the revealing of you. So let's see what that looks like. So, so creation itself needs to be set free from its slavery to corruption into the freedom of the glory of the children of God. So whatever you're expressing as what God has done in your life, all creation is going to be carried along with that. It's a pretty crazy thing, isn't it? Okay. So, for we know that the whole creation groans and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now. And not only this, but also we ourselves, having the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our body. So our body is going to be turned from being our enemy, because we saw in Galatians that the flesh is always at war with the spirit. And everything the spirit wants to do, the flesh wants to go the other way. And so we live with inner turmoil within us. And you know, if we were sitting in quietly and facing each other face to face, we'd all admit it. Yep, we're in that place. We have to fight against our own passions to make ourselves live the life that we know people and that God wants us to live, and it's a constant battle. And and so once that battle is taken away, whoa, all the possibilities. Just sit around and just have beautiful, wonderful thoughts and not have to fight against those crummy thoughts. Okay, and that crummy TV, whatever. So so um, so we're waiting our own adoption. So when our own flesh will be redeemed, redemption. For in hope we have seen. Oh yeah, our adoption, the redemption of our body. Okay, I just said that. For in hope we have been saved, but hope that is seen is not hope. For why does one hope for what he sees? Yeah, but if we hope for what we do not see, well, that's the reality. With perseverance, we wait eagerly for it, and that's that picture that was when we looked at what Jesus called us for. That's part of that picture. Okay. Anyway, God bless you all. Thank you for putting up with Don and his messages, and I pray that you will be incredibly blessed through the Spirit and in the name of Jesus. Bye bye.